All right, it is 12:03 by my watch, and I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome. I am so glad you're here today for my second series in the equine webinar, and today we're going to discuss older equine care. The agenda, we're going to talk about aging gracefully, what it means to be an older horse, some signs of aging. We're going to talk about the importance of weight management for your older equine. We're also going to touch on nutrition and hydration, as well as talk about metabolic conditions that affect older horses. And then we're going to talk about some exercises that you can do to keep your older horse in shape, and that's geared more towards the geriatric horse. And finally, we will end on comfort measures, and then if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to unmute your mic. You are more than welcome to type in the chat box, or you can email me afterwards. Either way is fine. Some objectives, like I said, you're going to be able to list the signs of aging in equine. You're going to be able to distinguish between the different body condition scores, which is essential for any age horse. You're going to understand the importance of dental health and how it plays a part in nutrition. And also, we're going to talk about some medical conditions or metabolic conditions and describe the comfort measures. So if you could go ahead and get your cell phone out and text, you're going to text Newton Extends 679 to this number. It's 37607, and you're going to join our session. So you're going to be able to join our session, and I want you to tell me what the age of your horse is. So if you have one horse, just do one entry. If you have multiple horses, you can do multiple entries. So for me, my horses are aged 9 and 5. And I'll give you guys a couple seconds or a couple minutes to get logged on and get in your phones. Just try to refresh it here. Okay, so we'll wait a couple more minutes. All right, so we have ages all over. We'll continue back to our presentation. So when we're talking about older horses, how old is senior? When you're thinking about a senior horse, the chronological age, so the actual number of years, is 18 to 20 years old. So anything older than 18, 20 years old we were talking about a senior horse. And I looked it up one year. The average age of the rope horses at the NFR was 16 years old. So horses age very well, and in quotes, you're only as old as you feel. That's the physiological age. And a lot of times we see horses as they're aging, their functions begin to decline, like they have weight loss, lameness, reduced vigor. However, due to research by universities and the availability of resources for older equine, horses are living much longer than they were 30, 40 years ago. So here's kind of an age breakdown of, kind of how horses compared to humans. So when they're newborn, they're about 2 years in human age. And once they get up into their 24th year, that's like a 70-year-old human. So they do age differently, and a lot of people say for dogs it's like every 7 years, but for horses, after their 5th year, it's every 2.5 human years. So some general signs of aging, we've all seen that older horse, that elderly horse, and they have the gray hair on their face, and sometimes they'll get gray throughout their coat. Decreased elasticity in their skin. They start to have those sagginess around their chest muscles and their hindquarters. Decreased muscular strength and definition. They start to get a little flatter in those hip bones. Loss of elasticity in their tendons and ligaments. That's why it's important to recognize requirements for exercise. Joint stiffness, that can definitely increase as they age. Reduced digestive efficiency and increase for the risk of colic. So if you were with us last time on our equine health and first aid seminar, we talked about what colic is and some signs and things to do for colic. Gum and dental disease. So as horses age, their teeth and their mouth become super important, and you should definitely check on that regularly. Reduced exercise tolerance and difficulty in conditioning. Reduced mental alertness and increased napping. So older horses, they take more naps. You're going to see them snoozing more often in the pasture. Osteoporosis, trouble maintaining their weight. Reduced tolerance for extreme heat and cold. Slowing down, so just general, less interest in moving. They're always going to be the last one to come up, or they, just don't really want to move around too much. Reduced resistance to infections and parasites. It's essential to make sure you keep your horse on a deworming program. And speak with your vet. And development of vaccine reactions and allergies. So as your horse ages, you need to start talking with your vet about vaccines and allergies that they may have developed. So when we're talking about older horses, one of the major problems that they can have is an increase in weight. So they can become those easy keepers, as we like to call them in the horse industry. And they lose their muscle mass, but they tend to replace it with those fat deposits. And that poses two major problems. One is the extra weight is very hard on their joints. Their joints are already losing that cushion in between them, and that extra weight is just making it very hard. And as they age, they become insulin resistant. So we're going to talk more about that in our metabolic conditions, but they could potentially develop conditions like type 2 diabetes. So it is essential to monitor their body condition score every other week. And you're like, oh, but I see my horse every day. Well, you may not know, or you may not notice those changes over time. So I would recommend that you use a weigh tape, or just make a mental note, or even record it down what their body condition score is. And the recommended body condition score is about 5 to 6 for your geriatric older horses and just horses in general. And on the next slide, I'm going to show you, this is what the body condition scoring looks like. Currently, my 5-year-old is at a 5. He is a moderate. And my 9-year-old is probably in between a 6 and a 7. She is on the easy keeper end. And we've all seen, you know, those elderly horses that are kind of more at the 4, especially, you know, at the end of a winter season. And that's when you need to think about, you know, increasing nutrition, increasing fiber, and, you know, blanketing to help keep them warm. In the summer, sometimes they may get to be fleshy and even fat. And that's when you want to make sure that you start doing the grazing muzzles, or, you know, start restricting calories for those horses that are getting fleshy and fat. Some areas that you want to think about when you're doing the body condition score is the thickening of the neck. So across the top, across the crest of their neck, you want to see how thick and fleshy it is. Across widthwise, also, you know, right there at their mane. Also, you want to look at the fat deposits at the around their tail head. That's a really good indicator. If their tail head is protruding, they're probably too skinny. However, you know, if their tail head is sunk down in their hindquarters, they're going to be too fat. So when you're talking about older horses, a lot of people recommend that you have your horse's teeth checked biannually. And that is essential, whether it's by a veterinarian or a licensed equine dentist. You definitely need to make sure that their teeth are checked, because things can happen. A lot of things can happen in 6 months, especially if the horse has a loose tooth. That could definitely develop into an infection. It could develop into an abscess. And depending on where the tooth is at in their mouth structure, they may have to have surgery to have it pulled out. So you want to make sure that you're keeping an eye on those front teeth. As the horse ages, you can see the difference here between a 5-year-old mouth that has an angle of incidence, which is that little red angle right there, of almost 180 degrees for young horses. However, for older horses, you know, it can go down below 90 degrees. And as they age, their teeth get longer, their enamel wears down, and they tend to have sharp edges. So you want to make sure that you are taking care of that on a biannual basis, and making sure that you're noticing how your horse chews, how your horse eats. Is it dropping feed? So here we're going to look at, this is an older horse. You can see how long their teeth are. You can, up in the top left of your screen, you can see how much tartar he has around each tooth at the gum line. So horses do get tartar, and your equine dentist or veterinarian can go through and scrape that off. And looking over at the picture inside the mouth, you can see that there is an overgrown upper left. It's very long, and he has a severe wave in his mouth. And the upper left fourth cheek tooth was actually loose. So down here where the picture with the quarter is, you can see that tooth that was loose, you know, was dark and could have severely become infected. And a lot of older horse will lose their teeth, especially in the front. So when they lose those front teeth, they tend to lose the ability to graze. So it's essential to make sure that you are providing those nutrients in a manner that the horse can adequately get it to its digestive system. When we're talking about signs of dental issues with horses, dropping feed is always the first sign of a dental issue, typically with any horse. If they have those big waves, if they have a sharp point or a long tooth, their chewing pattern is going to be off, and then their mouth is going to gape and they'll drop their feed. So when you're talking about any horse, dropping feed is definitely a sign of dental issues. In older horses, excessive salivation is a sign. Being slow to eat. And in the health and first aid series, I said, know your horse is normal. If it's normal for your horse to eat slow, then I wouldn't be concerned. However, if your horse gobbles his food up really fast, and now he's in his, now he's 21 and he's starting to eat slower, and you can't really remember when the last time you had his teeth done. You thought it was, back in the summer, but you don't really remember. So you want to make sure that you're recognizing his normal and any changes. Quitting is also another sign of dental issues, especially in older horses. So the picture of the hand holding that wad of hay and feed, that's a quid. And so then choking. So if they can't chew up and they try to swallow something like the quid, then they will definitely choke. Signs of bad breath could mean that there's an infection or an abscess in those mouths, and also weight loss. So maybe you're feeding them, and you dump the feed and you got to go to work, or you dump the feed and you got to go home and cook supper or whatever, and you don't watch them eat, and you're like, okay, well, I'm feeding them every day, twice a day, this much. Why aren't they, maintaining their weight? And they could be dropping it. They could be not chewing it up completely so that those nutrients are digested, and they're losing it through their digestive system. So having their teeth checked regularly is super essential. So we're going to watch a quick video about quitting.
Hi, this is Kim Hallen, and today I want to talk about equine quitting. I want to start with a video of two horses who are eating hay normally. So these horses don't have any tooth issues and they are chewing correctly. You can see they're pulling the hay out with their front teeth, and then with their tongues they move the hay back to the molars, which are back in that big round area of their jaw. They're grinding the hay back there. It's all done very seamlessly. They chew and grind mostly with their mouths closed, actually. They pull the hay out, and then here comes my older gelding. He was 30 years old, the bay that's coming in from the back, and he's the one I want to show you. He had lost quite a few teeth at this point. He still liked to eat the hay, and he could pull it out, as you watch here, just like the other horses. He had front teeth, so maybe he had a little bit of trouble, but he would pull the hay out and he would move it back with his tongue, just like the other horses did. But then you're going to see, and I've got it in slow motion here, you're going to watch him try to chew it. You see his mouth really come open here, and he's going to turn sideways in a minute, and you're going to see it better. See how he's opening his mouth as he's trying to almost chomp the hay because he cannot grind it. He doesn't have enough teeth in the back. So this is what quitting looks like, and I'm going to show you a little bit more of it here. Really a lot more mouth action than you saw with the horses who were chewing normally. And as he turns his head here in a minute, he's working on it. He's trying to see if he can find enough teeth back there to grind it with, but he can't. And this is typically horses that have lost teeth or have tooth issues. And in a minute here, you're going to see him actually, bring the wadded hay. We call that the quid. Here we go. We're going to see him bring it forward, and he's actually just going to spit it out in mid bite, sort of in mid chew, and then he's going to go and reach for more. Horses, I've been told that horses kind of in sterigos. You see the quitted hay drop out. That's what we call quitting. And he just spits it out because he can't grind it. And I have heard that horses instinctively know not to try to swallow food that they haven't been able to grind up because they won't be able to swallow it, and it would probably lead to choke. And in fact, in just a minute, I'm going to show you some video of a horse that is actually having a mild choke so that you can see the difference. Here we go. So this is my mare Tempo was having a mild choke at this point. You can see the foam on her lips because she's, you know, trying to, there we go, you see her kind of give that really strong muscle motion that went down her neck. That was an indication of choke. So she doesn't actually have tooth issues. She is just not able to swallow here. And you can see it almost looks similar in the sense that you think she's going to try to spit this out here, but if you watch her, she's actually not trying to spit it out. Shoki in the first clip didn't have any trouble spitting it out. Here she almost lets it go, but you can see her still holding on to it. This is a horse that wants to be able to eat it, thinks that she should be able to eat it, but can't because she's having a mild choke. And you can actually see a little bit of liquid kind of coming out of her nose as well, which is very common in chokes. This was a mild choke. It resolved naturally in just a few minutes, but a very different mouth action than quitting, where they actually spit it out intentionally and drop it without all of this you know, moisture and extra fluid coming back up, which is.
So that's the difference between choking and quitting. And nutrition is super important. And we'll talk about hay on the next slide and forages on the next slide. But when you're talking about nutrition, you want to look at the energy requirements of an older horse. And they're more concerned, you want to be more concerned with the carbs and fat. So that's what gives the energy. And then fiber within the feed, and then also protein. So when you're talking about lysine, and lysine is the limiting amino acid when feeding horses, it's definitely a good indicator of the quality of protein. So you don't want to necessarily be worried about the quantity, because most horse feeds, commercial horse feeds, meet those protein requirements. However, you want to look at the quality. And essential amino acids like lysine cannot be made by the horse, and therefore they must be present in the diet. And because the low dietary lysine intake can limit that protein synthesis, many modern day commercial feeds have that added lysine source, and they can guarantee those levels in their products. So seeing it listed on the tag can help give you some peace of mind that your feed understands the importance of lysine and the equine diet, and you know, make sure that they have that in their supported ration. And also vitamins and minerals are essential. Making sure that your horse has access to those free choice vitamins and minerals, adding a salt lick or things like that in your pasture free choice is really helpful. So when you're talking about hay and, you know, forages, the you don't necessarily need to feed that dairy quality alfalfa. A lot of people think their older horses need that higher protein of the alfalfa, and that's not necessarily the case. Just a good quality hay that has been harvested early in the season means that it's palatable and soft for the horse. So by being palatable, that means the horses like the taste, they like the quality, and they are okay with eating it. I will say that a Bermuda grass hay, because it's a little bit finer, may cause colic, like an impaction colic, especially if the horses don't chew it up very well. So feeding a mixed grass hay is widely accepted, an orchard grass, timothy, something like that. And adding in alfalfa is definitely not a bad idea when you're talking about feeding the senior horse. That added protein and even the added calcium benefits of the alfalfa kind of helps reduce the acid and keep those horses' guts in good condition. Now, when you're talking about senior feeds, I personally would not recommend switching it to a senior feed until your horse is showing signs that it needs that extra high fiber. Maybe it's starting to become an easy keeper and it needs the low starch and it needs the low sugar. So senior feeds are going to likely include moderate calories. They're going to include that high protein for that extra muscle, so the lysine, the essential amino acids. It's going to allow for, or it's going to have high fiber to allow for those dental issues. And then it's going to be increasing in phosphorus, which is helps the horse digest. And it's going to have increased vitamins and minerals, so for immune support, such as vitamin E or C. And typically they're in a processed format. So that means it's pelleted or extruded. And extruded means that it goes through a process and it's a little bit bigger cubes, but it's broken down and it's very easy to consume and digest for the horse. A lot of times senior feeds can be fed as a complete feed, which means that they can be fed with or without hay in amounts necessary to ensure those proper gastrointestinal health and function for the horses. A lot of times older horses, they have drier mouths, so you may need to feed it as a wet mash. And be sure that you, with any senior feed that you get, because each manufacturer is different, that you follow all of the feeding recommendations and labels. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to your veterinarian or reach out to an extension agent or someone like that to help you kind of tailor your feeding program to the equine that you own. I talked about horses having a dry mouth. Hydration for the senior horse is of the utmost importance. Horses can drink between 5 to 10 gallons of fresh, clean water every day. And dehydration is one of the most common causes of impaction colic. In the wintertime, winter's coming up. Horses don't always drink when it's cold. So you want to be sure that you're offering that water at an acceptable temperature. And you have to think, as those horses are aging, the enamel on their teeth are wearing away. And think about you, if you drink something really cold, it kind of hurts your teeth sometimes. And so horses are not going to want to drink that super cold water. Maybe a younger horse will, and they're fine throughout the winter. However, if you have an older horse, you might want to think about offering a way to have warmer water. There are commercial bucket heaters that you can get, and there's commercial tank heaters that you can get. So making sure that water is always fresh, free choice, and at the acceptable temp, that's going to increase your horse's desire to drink more. You can also add a salt supplement to their diet, or even electrolytes. That's going to increase their desire to drink more. I know in the winter time for my horses, I do put them on an electrolyte just to increase their hydration and increase their willingness to drink. So this slide right here kind of, there's several equine health concerns that we could dive into, but I just picked two today to kind of discuss. They're kind of two of the most common ones for older horses. And the first one, you can see in the top right corner there, that sorrel chestnut gelding. He has equine pituitary pars intermedia dysfunction. It's also known as Cushing's disease. So as your horse ages, you want to make sure that, you know, this is a possibility. You know, sometimes it's based on genetics of the horse. They may have a genetic disposition to this disease, but it's a complex progressive disease that affects the pituitary gland. And the pituitary gland is a small structure that's located at the base of the horse's brain, and it produces a hormone that regulates many of the body functions. Cushing's disease is associated with like clinical signs that include a long, curly hair coat, increased water consumption and urination, excessive sweating, and sometimes lactation, which is producing milk in mares. The hair coat changes usually within years after, you know, the beginning of the pituitary dysfunction. So subtle hair coat changes, you know, are definitely signs of Cushing's disease. Maybe a tendency for that winter hair coat to come on a little early than all the other horses, or shed out a whole lot later than your other horses. So these affected horses affected with Cushing's disease, are definitely prone to chronic infections like dental diseases and also sole abscesses. I have a friend who has an older mare, and she is dealing with a chronic abscess in her feet, and that's definitely, you know, something that goes along with Cushing's disease. The next disease we're going to talk about is equine metabolic syndrome, and basically it's an increased fat deposits, insulin resistance, and predisposition to laminitis. These animals, just like the little appy pony down here at the bottom left, they're going to be typically obese. And this little appy pony is definitely obese. You can see the fatty bones at his tail head. You can see super crusty at his neck. And you can see that there's a lot of fat coverage over those hips and on his loin area especially. So laminitis is a chronic condition. It could be chronic or acute condition that affects the hoofs. And other signs of EMS include infertility, altered ovarian activity, so maybe they have different hormones going on, and also an increased appetite. We all know those older horses like to eat, but if it's even more so than a normal older lesson horse pulling away and trying to eat, then you definitely need to be concerned. And alert your vet if there is the slightest change in your older horse. A lot of these conditions are easily managed and you know, treated in the very beginning. But if you know, if your pony gets to the point of this appy pony, or your Morgan horse, there are some breeds that are more prone to the EMS than others. But if they get to this point, you know, it's going to be kind of hard to manage it, and so you definitely want to alert your vet if they're drinking and urinating more often than normal. Again, it goes back to knowing your horse is normal. Making sure that they're not lethargic, they're not coughing, maybe there's a sudden drop in their pasture social food chain. A lot of times those older horses, they're top of the food chain. They've been there the longest. They know what's up. They are the boss. But if they have a sudden drop in that food chain and those younger horses are running around, you might want to be concerned. Maybe there's a change within that horse, and those other horses are kind of noticing that. Here are just some more pictures of EMS versus PPID or Cushing's disease. So the two sorrel horses or chestnut horses, one is a severe case of Cushing's disease. You can see he is a woolly mammoth, basically, and he has that thin top line. He is, you know, very woolly all the way down to his hooves, and it's super curly. And then the other sorrel or chestnut is super fat. That horse is probably going to be diagnosed or is already diagnosed with EMS. And it's one of those easy keeper type horses. The dark bay black horse up at the top could be an early sign of Cushing's. You know, maybe it's starting to warm up a little bit, or it's just the first signs of fall and he's already got that thick winter coat on. And then the little pony at the bottom, that's a fat pony. So especially with ponies and Morgan horses, hackneys, things like that, you want to be super concerned with their caloric intake as they age and make sure that they don't develop that insulin resistance. So this is the fun part, exercising with your senior horse. That's the most fun. Getting them out, getting to ride them. It's like riding you know, it's like muscle memory. They know you, you know them. And that's the fun part about senior horses is you've been with them for a long time, or they've been around for a long time. They know exactly what you're thinking. But one of the most important things when you're considering exercises for your older horse is to maintain their top line. Typically, that's one of the first things to go. And when I say their top line, that means like from their withers area down back through their loin to their hip. And that kind of helps, you know, hold their body up. That gives them the roundness, the ability to collect up underneath themselves. And you want to make sure that you are keeping that conditioned. And a body in motion stays in motion. Don't ever give them the winter off. If you're like, oh, well, it's cold, I'm going to give my, you know, 20-year-old the winter off. No, at least get them out and lunge them, or make sure that they have turnout, or make sure that they are getting exercise on a regular basis, and exercise multiple times a week, not just those weekend trail ride warrior things. Making sure that you're concerned with the reduced circulating blood volume. So horses tend to lose that circulating blood volume as they age, and it's harder for them to recover. So you want to make sure that you're taking multiple breaks. You're listening to your equine partner. You know, if he becomes, you know, winded very easily, make sure that you're giving him that walking time to recover. And if it's really hot, they become less efficient at dissipating the heat. And you want to make sure that you're giving that horse ample cool down time, that they're, you know, you're hosing them off, you're dissipating that heat from them when it's really hot. And lunging first is a great best practice. You know, when you lunge the horse, you have the ability to see their movement when you're off their back. You can see if he's a little stiff on one side. You can see if he's a little ouchy on a hoof, or you know, maybe he's a little short strided, and take those signs and know what that means. And you know, maybe your horse is a little stiff because it's a cold morning and he just needs to walk a little bit to loosen up and limber up, and then you can go on with your ride. So just make sure that you're paying attention to those signs that your horse is giving you. And like I said, always lunge them first to see firsthand how they're moving, what their gait's like. And also, actually I got this picture from Horse and Rider, the sweet stretching. So carrot stretches are an excellent way to keep your senior horse limber. So maybe you can't ride them anymore, or maybe you're just looking for extra ways to spend time with your horse. So you can take a carrot or an apple or anything like that, and you can lure your horse to stretch around. So stretch around to its flank with its head and neck. Stretch low, you can stretch high, you can stretch down in between their legs, and do 2 to 4 repetitions of each stretch, done both before and after the workout. And it gives your gives your horse the ability to become limber, and don't expect your horse to reach around and touch its flank the first time you try it. Give him some opportunities to start easy and then eventually increase that distance that you're asking your horse to stretch around. So I have a quick video about riding a horse with arthritis. SmartPack actually has a really great video series where they're speaking with one of their veterinarians. And
my horse has arthritis really bad in the winter, but in the summer seems fine. Is that okay for me to ride, or is it okay for me to ride more?
Right.
Sorry.
So you know what the first thing is I'm going to say?
Get a diagnosis.
Get a diagnosis.
I'm noticing a trend for these videos today.
Let's just make sure that what you're dealing with is arthritis, and that get your vet's approval, permission, okay. Make sure they're on board with you. They're on the same page. If they might have a reason why in your particular situation, maybe, I can't imagine, but maybe it's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Maybe, movement's usually always good, not stall rest, but maybe riding is unsafe. So I would say use some common sense too. If there is a safety concern, then maybe just doing things on the ground with your horse is all that's, like in the winter when your horse feels particularly bad, maybe that's all you can do. And then in the summer, maybe that feels better enough to actually have you sit on them and go somewhere. Because they do like to have a job.
They do like to have, mentally keeps them engaged.
Yeah.
So go back, get the diagnosis, and then see kind of where your horse feels most comfortable and kind of listen to him.
And that's the thing. You're getting ahead of me here. I have another quote. So one is, try something, and if the horse gets better, it's probably good for him. Common sense. And then, ironically, in this age of science and imaging, the expression of the horse is still the best guide to providing care. So the point is, listen to your horse. Let them tell you what you're doing, what you're asking me to do is too much, or I can do more, Mom, or that, like maybe walking over ground poles is too much.
Yeah.
You think, oh, that's good exercise, it's stimulating to the mind, the body, but maybe that ask to bend and to lift is too much, and maybe so they're sore the next day. That's them telling you,
let's not do that again.
Yeah, but you have to be creative, and so there's lunging, there's long lining, what might be called ground driving, and there's patterns. There's association. One of the Western Dressage associations has competitive patterns that you can use for to be interesting.
Change things up a little bit.
Yeah, of course I'm a big fan of clicker training.
Yeah, yes you are.
I think you can do some groundwork with and without obstacles. That's always fun. Hand walking is good for both you and the pony. But some tips are stick to low impact. So jumping is probably out. Barrel racing, anything with fast starts and fast stops and quick turns and those kind of things are, speaking from experience, can be painful to joints and things. Take your time warming up and also warming down. And this is something I learned a long time ago with any age of horse. Tell me if you do this. I hand walk them before I get on.
I would love to say that I do. How long?
No,
like from the cross-ties to the arena?
No, I don't walk a horse from cross-tie to the arena and get on. I'll do like one lap each way and then get on.
I do a little bit because I do take my time with the girth. I don't like to so a little bit like that.
So like you do a lap and tighten the girth and do a, and be regular and consistent. So especially with these kind of horses, a little bit, 15-20 minutes every day is better than 2 hours on every weekend, every Saturday.
I think we all kind of get into like that weekend warrior mode because of jobs and all that stuff. So
avoid long layoffs. It's really important to check saddle fit in the older horse because their top line can go quickly, and then your saddle needs adjusted. Make sure that the hooves are in good shape. So some people, when their horse is retired and maybe they pull shoes and they're like, oh, I'm just gonna have his feet done like every 3 months. No, they probably need hoof care more often.
Well, the thing is, as we've spoken about before, if the feet aren't landing correctly, it throws off how they move and how their joints are working and all that. So it just kind of like has a ripple up effect from there.
And back to the veterinarian, the thing we didn't mention is your vet may, when he or she is guiding you, and yes, you can exercise or no, you can't ride or whatever, they're also going to design a program for you that involves movement, maybe some prescription medications, and then they're going to pair that with a joint supplement, which if your horse is retiring from competition, the joint supplement might change. There might be things that you couldn't include in there, like herbs or whatever, when you were showing, but now you have access to them. It doesn't matter. But it can be fun because you look at your joint supplements and there's the traditional ingredients, like the glucosamines and the chondroitin sulfates and that. And there's some newer ones now. I think we have one. There's a resveratrol, turmeric is trending, collagen. So you can play around a little bit with see what your horse does better on. And horses are individuals like people. They're going to respond better to some and not others. We don't all respond to the same thing the same way.
And what's cool about some of those ingredients that you mentioned is not only specifically good for like joint health, they can be good for overall health in general.
That's right. Yep. More.
So when you're talking about some comfort measures, the vet in the Smart Pack video mentioned some joint health supplements, but however, turnout is one of the best comfort measures that you can provide for your older equine. Making sure that they're getting out in the pasture, that they have the ability to walk around freely, they have the ability to have that turnout and graze and walk is great. The use of anti-inflammatory drugs, a lot of vets are going to prescribe things like Previcox, and that's a prescription for your older equine. Also, making sure that your stalls are bedded down deeply. Those horses go to lay down, they want to be able to lay down and it be soft. They don't really care what they're standing on, but they do care what they're laying on. And older horses, as I said before, are going to take more naps, so they're going to enjoy that deeper bedded stall. A lot of veterinarians have reported anecdotal success with those joint health supplements like glucosamine and chondroitin. And like the vet in the video said before, if your horse is retired from showing, you have a lot more herbs and things like that are available to help, like turmeric and things that are banned in the show ring that you can use for a horse at home use. And also joint injections. So making sure that that's something that your vet can recommend, and that's something that they can perform, and injecting those joints with an added cushion. And ultimately, in the end, you want to know the signs of declining quality of life. Be sure that you're in constant contact with your veterinarian about any changes, and make sure that you have a plan in place for those older equine when it is time to discuss the option of euthanasia. A horse that can't maintain good body condition or can't lie down and get up with ease is definitely of concern. And you want to make sure that you are providing that horse with the best care and best quality of life. So that is the end of my presentation. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to unmute your mic and join in the conversation. I do have one publication that I will show you. It's from the University of Georgia. We won't go into it, but they do have a publication called Caring for the Older Horse. It's an overview of what I described and a little bit more in depth of those metabolic conditions, lameness, things like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. And I will say that all of our resources will be stored on our Newton A&R blog website. So if you haven't been there to check it out, I'll go ahead and click on it. Under the Equine webinar series resources, you can click there and find more information. This is from our first Equine Health and First Aid series. You can check out the presentation there. And I thank you so much for being with me today. I will hang around. If anyone has any questions, feel free to jump on and ask or write it in the chat box.